welcome to this week's episode of the Marina Perry Podcast. I am, as always, your host, and today I have the beautiful Trace Garbin on, who is a creative whose artistic expression really comes through the forms of writing and teaching, which we will be diving into. We're going to unpack the beautiful, juicy topic of, let's call it inner wisdom, as she likes to call it, also known as intuition, and also self-awareness, the power of self-awareness. So Trace, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited about today's topic. I mean, intuition or inner wisdom is such a pivotal and kind of pillar piece of so much of the work that I love to share with people. So I'm really excited about this conversation. But before we get into your journey and hear how this has become also a pillar for you, I'm really curious, what would be the animal that most represents you in behavior or nature, and why?
Good question. Now, I was on a retreat many years ago, and it was a very left of center retreat, so my type of retreat. And we had this exercise in the morning, and we were bringing in our spirit animals. My spirit animal, you know, I wanted it to be cute. Like, I had all these expectations back then about what I wanted my animal to be like. And I had no control over this. It just morphed itself. It was a mountain goat, and not a like pretty looking one. But here's the thing. Mountain goats are very resilient. They handle change beautifully. So I'm cool with that.
Yes, I love that. And to be fair, I mean, the question really is, what is your spirit animal? But just in this politically correct world of ours, I tend to ask the question differently. But I too have journeyed through with a shaman through a meditation for spirit animal. And I've shared this story before, but I can resonate deeply with your expectations versus reality kind of story there, because I was like, I'm gonna have a wolf or a lion, it's gonna be fluffy and powerful and I'm gonna love it. And then literally out of the flames towards the end of this thing, this cobra head, this snake stood up and I was like, literally in the meditation I was like, no. And this energy was just like, yes. And I just was like, okay, I will accept this. And then, like you, I came to realize what it really represents, which is transformation and metamorphosis, which is everything that I teach. So it made perfect sense in the end. And now I actually kind of really embrace the symbolism of the snake. But I love that story, and I love goats. Have you seen those videos where they are on the side of a thing, and then the video pans out and it's like they're 2,000 feet in the air on the side of a rock that literally has nothing to hang on to? It's mind-blowing.
Yes, they're very agile creatures.
Indeed. Okay, and then if you could have a superpower, which superpower would you choose to have and why?
Wow. I think time travel, in not only like in the universe, in the dimension that we're on, but into other dimensions really easily.
Portal travel, yeah, that's very cool. I like it. All right. So tell us now, talking about journeying through different portals and different paradigms and timelines, what a great segue if you can share with us your personal journey and how you came to be about and, be in the expression of yourself that you find yourself now.
Well, it's been a bit of a journey, one that and everyone has their story to tell, don't they? Mine started about 20 years ago, so I'm in my 40s now, and I just felt like life felt like I was in really tight shoes, essentially, and that was just my conditioning. So I think that sums it up beautifully, because that's the feeling I had. Just life felt tight and restrictive. I just had no self-worth. I didn't trust myself and other people. I overthought about everything, and it was just my conditioning holding me back. And it's like, have you ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I have not read the book, no, but I'm aware of the book and familiar with the content, but not actually read the pages.
So there is this part of the book and everyone's trying to find out what the answer to life is, right? And I'm not going to tell you what they say in the book, just in case you want to read it. However, what I found is that self-awareness was my answer. You know how when you're really lost and things just aren't feeling good, you're always thinking, oh, you know, I can't figure out life. I want to know what the answers are, or you know, it's such a mystery. It's so hard. And self-awareness just unlocked everything for me. And in the 20 years, what I had discovered is I went to a lot of practitioners, both Eastern and Western, and, you know, self-awareness wasn't a big thing. So I've been teaching adults for the last 15 years, and I actually fell into the work. And so I'm really particular with how I teach. I want people to reach those learning outcomes. And I just found there were a lot of practitioners that just were skirting around the sides of self-awareness, or what they were teaching gave me really short-term results. I didn't get any longevity. And I found as soon as I worked out that it was self-awareness and accessing my intuition, inner wisdom, my soul wisdom, yeah, the rest is history. Giddy up.
And so for someone listening who's like, okay, cool, self-awareness, great. What does that mean to you, Trace? Like to come to this realization that self-awareness is the key. What does that mean for someone who maybe, you know, language is unique to each of us?
Good. Excellent framing, Marina, as always. Okay, so self-awareness. It can be very exhausting looking outside yourself for the answers. And I, for many years, went to psychics when I had really big decisions to make. It's like, oh, I can't make that decision myself. And, you know, you agonize over the decision. When you are able to tap into the energy and your center of what's right for you, you gain so much more energy back, because you are not looking around. What is everyone else doing? What should I be doing? Everyone's doing this. It's really exhausting. So you maintain your life force energy through self-awareness just by working out, well, hang on, this is restrictive, this is expansive, you know, and it applies to everything. It's not just the big decisions, you know, great, I can make big decisions, but it's everything. It's the food you eat, the people you surround yourself with, the thoughts that you think, what you say, what you do, everything. And it's just working out what's expansive for you.
Yes, I agree. And I do want to, you know, for me, learning to move out of the mind and into particularly my heart space and accessing kind of my channel to source is something that I love teaching people too, because I feel like you're saying so many of us are conditioned out of our magic and out of our power and out of that very quick answer. In fact, it's a major aspect of a program I've run for 10 years called Dream Builder, and people don't expect it. It's like an aspect of the course they don't come for. We don't even tell them it's in there. And yet it's the piece that they use almost every day from that day forward. How to make decisions and to discern from within. So I'm on board, like with what you're saying. I'm like, you're preaching to the choir. I'm with you 100%. But I just had a thought as you were speaking, Trace, and I feel like with self-awareness, do you feel, I have seen this, so I suppose I'm asking, but at the same time, I'm saying, I feel like sometimes people come into a level of self-awareness where they are aware, but they then do not act in accordance with the awareness. So similar to the way that, you know, we used to have that old adage, and it was actually my high school motto, knowledge is power. And then those of us who are in the growth space often say, well, the application of knowledge can be powerful. Do you also feel that there's a dual step, or many steps perhaps, to, we do need the very most important potent step is what is my truth or my awareness, my self-awareness. And yet we can then, if we only start with that, we can almost drop into a worse vortex of, now I can see all my patterns. Now I know what I want to do. And if we don't then step into, say, aligned action as the, you know, it's a little bit of a overused phrase, but it's relevant, then we can we can miss kind of the magic that self-awareness could offer, I guess I'm asking. So
Yes.
would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to pause 1 second because I want to ask a very specific question. So if we were to say the one step is, first of all, self-awareness, and then the second is acting, I would like to first dive into your brilliance. You can add to this, but I'd love to know your brilliance around, for someone who's like, well, that's great, Marina, I know what you're saying, you can get stuck there, but I don't even know how to be aware yet. So can we just have Trace tell us how to get aware? Because I think that's really relevant, but I just know there would be some listeners who are aware, but feel stuck. So I wanted to just flag that for later, perhaps, to say, what do we do when we're aware, but we're not maybe feeling like we can act in alignment with it? Sorry. It just came up quite strongly. And I was like, I'm going to bring this forward and we can shelve it. So yeah, what would you say to that in response, or around particularly, how do we step into self-awareness?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a backward, forward, sidewards response. All right. So not self-awareness, but self-help. Okay. It can feel like very busy work, right? But that doesn't mean you're getting the results, and you can actually get caught up and distracted in self-help. Yes. Can't you? And there are steps, of course, feeling into the energy. I've got a free masterclass which shows people just how to feel into the energy of even just how they're feeling, consuming, the words that they're hearing or saying. So it's very subtle. But even before that happens, like that's in essence how you start to getting your self-awareness. And it's like a muscle. You've got to keep using it. So when I was a child, I could see spirits vividly, and I shared that information. And I was told on many occasions that what I was seeing and feeling and noticing wasn't real. So I just dimmed that intuition. So everyone has intuition. Absolutely everyone. And it's just getting rid of any layers that have dimmed the intuition. And then the biggest step, if you want self-awareness to be one of the biggest parts in accessing your inner wisdom, and this is really key, is having self-trust. And it's not like you can go, okay, guys, just love yourself, self-trust, you've got it. You've actually got to lead people through that.
And there's so much I just like, now I'm just like, oh yes, and so I'll try not to jump in. But with respect to what you just said, because I agree, self-trust is a massive pillar for intuitive awareness, and we have been gaslit, as you were, to not trust ourselves. We were told again and again that our instincts weren't right, again and again to shush our feelings, again and again to just suppress, repress, move forward. And it's important. I love what you're saying, that it's a muscle. And this is true of most growth work. I mean, on the physical level, the energetic level, the mental level, we have to show up again and again, right? To really gain mastery in any field. That's true. And so when we've dialed down, as you said, like dimmed and dimmed and dimmed time and time again, I would just love I'd love the listener who's like, oh, well, guys, I've tried to activate my intuition, or I've tried, it's like, keep trying, show up again. If you're committed to something, if you have an intention to something, you must, it's like a relationship. You can't say, well, I gave the guy the eye, I don't know why, we're not now married without happily ever after. Well, because relationships take time, skills take time, and your intuition is a skill, and it's one that you have been collectively and repeatedly reminded to not access. So you kind of have to almost have, I would say, would you agree? Double down on the amount of showing up just to even bring it back to its baseline, let alone enhancing it, because it's just been slapped out of us essentially. I agree with you, and I would love you to also share for the people listening, because I know that there are, and I used to be one of them, and I love your story, by the way, about visiting psychics. So that story of, and many people I know can relate. It's like, I don't know what to do, so let me go to the quote unquote special person with the quote unquote special powers, so they can quote unquote tell me the special information. I did it. And so I'm not judging, But I used to believe that people were special. If people were special, they had those powers. And I've since, much like you, had many spiritual experiences and have, developed my skills. And I agree with you that everyone has the capacity. But what would you say to the person who's like, Trace, I never saw spirits. Marina, I can't hear things like you can hear. I feel like I'm not special. How do I even start to develop these special skills?
Yeah. There are two things. So I channel Marina. And this has come through so strongly. So it does relate to what we're saying, but it's the listeners that actually need to hear this. And it does touch on what you've just said. So there might have been things that have happened in this lifetime. Take my story, for example, with my intuition and it being dimmed. However, you may have in other lifetimes, and don't overanalyze, intellectualize this too much, your intuition has been dimmed and you've actually brought that through. Yeah. And the other thing I do want to say, and I will go back to your question, is think about what age you are now. Okay. What happens in the brain is that we are creating neural pathways. So what happens before the age of 7 goes in our theta brainwaves, right? And you think from the time you're 7 to the age you're now, you've been making these neural pathways that have embedded certain conditioning. So to undo that, when you make new neural pathways, at first it's going to feel a little bit agitating, a little bit frustrating, because it's new. But you've got to think, whatever age you are now, from the subtract 7 years, and that's how much repetition you've had on your conditioning.
Yes, such a great reminder and such a valid point. I love that. So it takes time, is your point there, right? It takes time for them to re-embrace and reactivate and trust.
And
but they're able not to trust.
And for anyone that is doubting their intuition, you've just got to give it a chance. You've just got to tap into your center and stop doubting yourself and just give it a go, little step by little step. And it's constantly, and this is about self-trust. Why the hell do we find it so easy to show up for other people, to do work for other people, but we are not prepared to do that for ourselves? So if that is a little ritual that helps enhance our intuition, why are we not doing that? Why are we showing up for other people and not showing up for ourselves?
Well, what would you say the answer to that is?
It's just the conditioning we're stuck in. And it's not about blaming anyone for the conditioning at all. It is just noticing, well, okay, what am I doing? What is coming up when I'm trying to do that 10-minute activity for me and I'm showing up for myself? What am I feeling? What am I noticing? And sometimes you can't articulate, and sometimes it can't be intellectualized, but it's the noticing, and the accepting, and then the intention. We don't want to intellectualize too much, because that's all we'll be doing. Everything has such full-on meaning, and we won't get to be living and experiencing this beautiful existence.
So we'll link to that masterclass that you mentioned earlier, but for right now, even for someone who's like, yeah, guys, you're right, I need to activate my intuition, I'm keen. What are your top maybe 1 to 3 simple processes that people could start with? Something really tangible. They could be like, thanks, Trace, I'll give that a go tonight or tomorrow. Is it, you mentioned they're noticing and acceptance. is it just stillness? Is it quietness? Is it going within? Like, what do you suggest, or how do you start your clients with the very beginnings of self-awareness and inner wisdom?
I teach them about their nervous system, because it is the end, the middle, and the beginning. I grew up with a lot of mental illness, both, and I'm not just talking anxiety, I am talking clinical, I'm talking pretty intense kind of stuff. So I know how important your nervous system is. And here's the thing, if you've had big T trauma, like really big trauma, sometimes meditation is not actually good for you. So it is calming and coming back to your center in whatever way feels good for you. So if that's breath work, if that is meditation, if that is taking a moment, if that is dance, because everything is energy, right? And maybe it's just moving that energy around, and it's whatever gives you the mental stillness. It's not about getting rid of thoughts, because that's not going to happen. I've got a very busy mind, and I've had to work on this. And for me, it's breath work and meditation, but that's not going to be for everyone. And it's getting enough stillness so I can access that inner wisdom. If my head is like a busy, ridiculous highway, I'm not going to get any sense, and you need to be balanced. So here's another tip. When you're trying to access your intuition and your nervous system is all over the place, like it is, you've got stress hormones coming through because you're trying to be super person, and your head's doing really bizarre things, you've got a lot of noise in there, you've got old conditioning coming up, that's not a great time to be using your intuition. So you're actually setting yourself up for failure. So the best thing you can do is set a solid foundation. So make sure you're as grounded as possible. Get stillness. You don't want to have those stress hormones pumping through your body and then be making a big decision, or start to feel into the energy of what you're doing. And if you're wanting to get started in a really small way, okay, start thinking about 2 or 3 positive words. And what I want you to do when you're doing that, and this is going to be different for everyone, is feel into, because our bodies give us signals, what you're feeling in your body. Number one, where you're feeling it and what the sensation is, okay? And I want them to be really positive words that you align with, okay? And then do the same for restrictive words. It might be death, whatever, hate, whatever. And I want you to also feel into that in your body. These are the stepping stones. If we can't feel into what is restrictive and what is expansive, how are we going to know when we're trying to decide, should I be doing this?
Well, that's it, isn't it? So I have, I remember, what is that? Was it Dr. I want to say Emoto, who did the water crystals with the words, and the water showing up, the crystals showing up completely differently to words like love and joy and bliss and kindness, and then under a microscope, and then the molecules showing up very differently and very fractured and scattered to anger and hatred, and we are made of water. So this is for people who are like, it all sounds very fluffy. It's actually not. Your body, as you say, is as wise, perhaps even wiser than the mind, because the mind is more susceptible to the conditioning of others and the minefield that it maps out, and the fact that it'll often just repeat, and the body does too. It's all connected together. But I wanted to ask, 2 things. Firstly, you said if someone has had a capital T trauma, then dropping into meditation sometimes is not a good idea. So could you touch on that just for someone? I feel like someone hearing that might be oh, pardon, what? I've been trying to meditate. I have definitely had a capital T trauma, because it's actually surprising how many people have. So yeah, could you just explain why?
Okay, depending on if it's post-traumatic or just, trauma affects everyone so differently. There is no black and white, right and wrong response, okay? Number one. Number two is that meditation, especially if it's post-traumatic, can actually bring you back to the trauma event, and it can actually be more traumatic. Okay. And it would be really unwise of anyone suggesting, the way to everything, to solving your life is meditation. And then someone does meditation and they think, holy hell, this is not good. Like, there's something wrong with me, and there's nothing wrong. It's horses for courses. What suits one person doesn't necessarily mean it will suit another. And there are a lot of ways to come to center, to still that busy mind, to regulate your nervous system. So, yeah.
And so just for clarity for someone listening, because this wouldn't be relevant for everyone, and you're not saying that meditation can lead to trauma, but what I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if someone has not addressed an issue or has not worked with it, if they were to move into trauma or attempt to reach the still point, because so often what we do is we stay busy so as to suppress, repress, and not see.
Yes.
So when they come into that stillness, they might be met with all of the suppressed and repressed feelings, and they may have the experience of being traumatized in a meditation, but it's really they're coming to meet what has yet to be integrated and unfolded. I just wanted to clarify that, because I feel that some people are like, well, this is why I don't meditate, because I could be traumatized. Not what we're saying. Definitely not what we're saying, but I think it's a very relevant thing that you've raised. And I think more people need to be aware of that. So would you agree then that part of, this self-awareness or the importance of the nervous system, because I agree with you so much, is the ability to know if we are able to self-regulate, and therefore if we can meet any depth of expression, the wildest, if we can feel, one, that we can self-regulate, and that we have capacity to be in self-trust. Do you know what I mean? It's a capacity issue often, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely it is. First of all, Marina, what would I do without you? How you just completed what I was saying is perfection.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a team effort here, but I'm working with what you're providing, and it's all beautiful stuff. This is so valid.
And the beautiful thing about regulating your nervous system, it can be as simple. Like, think about, so I'm a mother, and I think about the ways and my son wouldn't even realize I'm doing this. I'll wrap him in some wool, like fluffy wool. Oh, and he loves it. As an adult, why can't, well, we can. We can be doing those types of things as regulating our nervous system. Like, it just doesn't have to be, this person who has so many followers has said it's meditation and this. Well, no, actually it's not. It's whatever calms you.
I love that.
It can be like a beautiful hot beverage, and just savoring that hot beverage as an example.
To be honest, part of me actually believes that's one of our big addictions. One of the reasons that coffee or caffeinated drinks has become such an addiction is because it's A, ritualistic, and B, because many people actually drop, perhaps for the only time in their day, into presence. And there's a part of us that's not actually receiving the deeper aspects of ourselves, really want that. And so we're like, oh, coffee, it's so great for me. And yet it's that stillness and that quiet time that's actually very nourishing. And then of course yes, the tea, love it. I wanted to ask a question, and I hope I think this would be, I've not asked this, I've never delved into this with someone, but I feel called to do it today. So you mentioned earlier that you channel, and you also mentioned, when we go into our inner wisdom, like dropping into your inner knowing. So just let the question land. It's really about two things. When you channel, let's ask the first. I have a thing of stacking questions, which you've done a wonderful job of noticing and kind of separating. So I'll try not to do that. But when you channel, for people who have clairvoyance and are, say, psychic, for those who do not currently possess those tangible skills, who would you say to them you are channeling, or what are you channeling?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. I'm very clear on this, but I have a lot of awareness of my past lives, for better or for worse. I've had some brutal deaths. Okay.
Love it. Some brutal deaths, yes.
A lot. And in this lifetime, my goodness, isn't this such a grand, beautiful, amazing time for people like us, Marina, and everyone to step into their power. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy. All right, so what am I saying? I got completely.
So who or what are you channeling?
Oh yeah,
I think it's a relevant question, because we outsource to the world, which is really what this conversation is about. We outsource to the world, we don't trust ourselves, and then we find these people with special skills. And one of the things that I personally have learned to discern is that even people with special skills, not everyone is, I'm going to just say is like, the ability to tap into energy beyond this dimension is not the same as a high level of consciousness. And so what I suppose I'm trying to ascertain or dive into a conversation around, if I can just cut to it, is energetic sovereignty, the ability, or spiritual hygiene, let's call it, and the awareness of that. Even channeling, sometimes depending who we're accessing, it may or may not necessarily be a wisdom that is, so you get where I'm going with this. So if we can dive into that.
All right, we have to kind of go a little bit backwards and a little bit sideways and a little bit to go forward.
Upside down. Let's just move into those realms.
Before I went into the Amazon jungle a few years ago, I went there to live for a month. Okay, so literally I got my backpack, I got let off at the side of the road, and I had to trek an hour in to, like, through mud, like it was literally, anyway. But before that adventure, because I was really quite concerned about energetic sovereignty, because I was about to do a lot of plant medicine, and I was also delving into, because I'd done my research on psychedelic salon. I love that podcast, by the way. Lorenzo is amazing. And when it comes to sovereignty, like if you're channeling and bringing in other entities, it's really important to say, if you're not here for my highest good, leave.
Yes.
Because especially when it comes to plant medicine, and items like that, you can, unfortunately, sometimes, depending on the shaman, there are good shamans and there are dark shamans. And you only have to see that once. Like, this might be belonging to people's minds. I'm sorry. So from a sovereignty point of view, it's just checking in, if you're bringing in an entity and information that is not yours, and you're delving into this for the first time, asking this, is this for my highest good? And even when I feel an entity, I'll actually say it. If you're not here for my highest good, leave. Number one. Number two, who I channel is a person called Thomas. He's my working guide. So we've been together forever. We've had other lives together. He was a teacher in one of my lives, and for whatever reason, he has decided me to be the conduit to raising consciousness with him. So I am very happy, and I can see how we align. I can see things. I was hanging up the washing this morning, and we're having a bit of a banter, and I just let him know that everything is aligning. I can see why I've gone on certain pathways to now be offering what I'm offering now. What I want to also say for anyone that's like, oh my God, I'm not special, I can't channel, two things. Number one, I had no idea. I actually had to get a coach. And I guess she wouldn't actually call herself a coach, but I just want people to understand this isn't just something I'm like, oh yeah, I've got it. I had so many layers I had to get through before I'm here. And so I worked with that lady intensely. I also went on one of her retreats.
Was that not a good experience based on your
it is. Hang on, let me unpack this. So
for anyone who is listening only to audio, I'm responding purely to the facials there of Trace. Yeah, tell us more. This sounds like a juicy.
Okay, so here I go to this retreat, and it does have roughly on the days what we're doing. But I'm thinking, it's a spiritual retreat. It was not. It was, but it was a channeling retreat. I get there, and on day 2, because your day 1 you get there about midday. Day 2 we were channeling, and I thought, what have I gotten into? And the whole time I was saying in my mind and to other people, am I doing this right? I'm not doing this right. And I was, and we all do that. We all say, oh, am I doing this right? And even the people that were more experienced than me, like profound, were saying, I feel like I'm making this up.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm laughing. I know all too well what you're saying. When I teach intuitive development and have been a student in it myself, exactly the same thing. And people will actually say, oh, I don't, if you're doing intuitive with items, for instance, they'll lead with the sentence, I didn't really get much. And then I don't know if you can relate to this story, Trace, but then they just tell the most insane visuals, and that they saw this and this, and they saw an elephant, and then they say they're holding a ring, for instance, and they're just getting all this information. And then the person whose ring it is shares, oh, I got that when I was in India, and I rode an elephant that day, and it was to symbol. And it's like, they think they didn't get anything, quote unquote. And yet they have this, and these are not trained, mystics or psychics. These are everyday people who think, I don't have any special skills. It's just that we never step into containers, would you agree, where we get told you can do it, so just do it. And to B, we think that this is a learned thing, but in the same way that you breathe, you may not breathe the same as me. I may not breathe the same rhythm as you, Trace, and we might occasionally be out of breath or all the things. There is an innate wisdom that if we provide the space and we just let go of the attempting to control, then your lungs just fill, breath just happens. It's part of what you have the capacity to experience. I don't know if that's maybe a fair representation for everyone, but I can totally relate to that. I'm not doing it right. I definitely am not as skilled as you, all these stories. And yet then it's like, what? Wow.
Absolutely. Agree with everything you've said. And the other part, sorry, that was the first part. The second part is, we all have a soul, right? And for some people, this might be new to them. Other people, we're into 2022. So I feel like everyone kind of understands, the concept of I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my body. So because of our soul, when you are accessing your intuition, your inner wisdom, your higher self, you are channeling. Okay.
Yes.
And there is no greater item to access than your soul, your inner wisdom, your whatever you want to call it.
Agreed. And I thought I just had, though, do you feel that there is an element or an impact, let's say, of, I'm going to use the word spirituality, but some people could say religion too. But if we were to have beliefs that we're just a brain and we're just a human having an experience here, but we don't ever maybe move past that to well, yeah, what's observing my thoughts and, you know, what's moving my body and all of that, that perhaps that could be, let's say, one of the cognitive or unconscious blocks to someone untapping their wisdom, is this, maybe they haven't yet sat with the question or open to the possibility that they are more than just a skin suit with a brain inside that's driving everything. Like I don't know, for myself, if I think of earlier versions of me, like really early versions, this wasn't even really on my radar. And it definitely seemed like only wacky, you know, if I'm honest, back then it would have been, well, wacky tobacco people do those kinds of, you know, things, because I was just so mentally wired to the mainstream construct of doing.
Absolutely.
And I just hadn't unfolded at all. Or sat with questions, because I wasn't raised religiously as a child. And the stepping into spirituality for me has been an unfolding journey. But the more I've unfolded into that, the more these kinds of aspects of living, let's call it, have just, it's almost like once you turn a corner, it's like there it is. Do you know what I mean? But if you're still in that matrix, maybe for a very overused metaphor, yeah, you can't see the feeling.
What you're putting down. Big time. That was me, butting up against my intellect.
Yeah.
Trying to intellectualize absolutely everything because of my conditioning. Absolutely.
So then if someone is listening and what we've just said has hit a chord, it's like, oh my gosh, that's me right now. I love all the growth stuff you do. I love all the tangible things where you teach me how to be productive. I love all that stuff, Marina. And then when you have some of these other people on, I mean, I know for sure many people in my audience, because I do bridge two worlds really. I know many people, some will not listen to certain podcasts, they'll just skip them. So remember, we do delete, well, you know this, but for those listening, you know, we generalize, delete, distort according to our current paradigm, which is why the work really is the self-awareness, as Trace is saying, to assess that our paradigm is not the fullest extent of the world that's possible. It's just the current frame that you've decided is accessible. So some people are unwilling to see that, but then I know that there are people who accidentally drop in and have their mind, like you said, a little bit blown and a little bit blown. But if someone's like, that's me, I hear all these people talk about all these spiritual things and it just doesn't, I don't know, I don't know how to access that. It doesn't seem to resonate with me. What would you say they could do if they were at least curious to lean in? I mean, I don't even know the answer to this question myself.
Honestly, layers, and you will be led down a certain pathway divinely if you are open to receive. So if you say to Source, I would like help understanding
the more
my soul, or dissolving my sense of self. Because in the spirit world, there is no sense of self. When you get into Buddhist teachings, everything is void of essence and meaning. So you've got to unravel that for yourself a little bit. There's no, and this is the thing, everyone's so different. Okay, so what worked for me is not going to work for you. Or the other person down the road. But it's just being open to receive. Yes.
I think actually that's the best answer that you could give, Trace. And two things that I'm going to reiterate that you just said for those listening that I think is it in a nutshell. You need to be open. If you're open and hold the intention of, please show me, please expand me, I'll sit with curiosity. It will come. And secondly, you said you'll be divinely guided in the way that is right for you. And I'll just tell a really quick story because it's so beautiful and you'll be like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. As I was asking this question of both of us, really, I thought to myself, I think one of the biggest pivots for me was when I read Conversations with God. Because until I read that book, I really had a very limited, I didn't really understand like that the universe was energetic. I didn't understand. I didn't really think past death. I was like, you're alive and then you're dead. You know, remembering I was not raised with any religion. And really, I probably would have even said I was atheist, maybe, if you'd asked me at a certain point in my life. I read that book. And now I read that book because my sister recommended it to me. And she said, oh, read this book. It's really good. It's not what you think. It's not really about God. It's because we were both not raised religious, and it's conversations with God. And I was like, okay, well, my big sister recommended it. It seems unusual for her to recommend something like that. It must be really special. Read this book. I would say it definitely awakened. It allowed my mind, which was, again, my biggest block, but kind of like a little gate that allowed me to peek through. And then, I mean, the rest is, you know, a whole other story. But what's fascinating about this story is it was probably only maybe 3 years ago that I gave her a book for her birthday. You know, we're all at that age where we normally don't even give presents, but I just was like, I think you'll like this book. I gave it to her. And she said, oh yeah, I've been thinking about this book. Thanks. And then I said, you know, I probably never said to you, but I have to say thank you for that book recommendation that you gave me 25 years ago, or whatever it was. And she's like, what book? And I said, Conversations with God. I definitely feel like it changed my life. And she said, Conversations with God? I never told you to read Conversations with God. And I was like, yeah, you did, because I definitely read it because you told me, right? And then she says, no, I told you to read The God Delusion, which is totally rebunking all God stuff. And that's why I was saying to you, it wasn't about God. Anyway, I got chills in the moment because I was like, isn't that fascinating? She directed me to a book that just totally different. And I had conversations with God, got conversations with God. And, you know, so I love what you're saying there. And for anyone listening, if you're called to it, the universe will 100% find a way to meet you and reach you, but follow the crumbs, right? Follow the crumbs.
I've just been asked to say, with channeling, there are a lot of people that channel that don't know their channel. And
Tell us more.
Okay, so have you ever heard someone say, this is God's divine word? And they go, I don't know where these words come from. I can tell you 2 superstars that actually do that. And look, and everything flows. Brene Brown and Oprah.
Yeah, they're beautiful channels. I agree.
And they would not ever say, look, I'm a channel. They're just really open to receive.
And I don't know if you'd agree, but they've also been, I'm sure they've had their fair share of criticism, but they've been safely received, and there's a reciprocity from the universe of, we need more of that. So then it gets bigger and more expanded and more expanded. You know, in the same way that we get conditioned out of our magic, those two have been reinforced into that beautiful piece of the mouthpiece, because the collective is like, we want more of that. It's magic. It's magic what you're sharing. And I don't know if you'd agree, but that's what happens when we each step into our purpose powerfully, right? It's like it's the universe, or the universe and the collective meets us there and is like, more please, because we're doing what we're here to do, which you said to me before this interview, that writing and teaching are your creative expressions. And I love that you said that, because I know that many listeners and myself would be in this bucket up until, you know, some years ago. I would not have identified or related to the word creative because I can't paint and I can't draw, et cetera, et cetera. Again, you know, it's just conditioning what creative means. But I love that you say teaching is my creative endeavor, as is writing. So can you expand, maybe for those listening, maybe a new perspective around creative, what it means to be a creative, and particularly why that's an important term to you?
I would also add into that list as well, cooking, because when I'm in my divine path, by doing my writing, by doing my teaching, magic absolutely unfolds in the way that it is effortless. The outcomes far exceed what I ever set out to achieve. There is a fantastic flow. And writing's a really good example, and I want to break this one down. I am not a natural writer. My husband has done a couple of units in literature, and he lets me know where my writing's at. But when I put the grammar, when I put, because you can edit, your first draft doesn't matter. You just got to get it on paper, right? When I am just in the flow of writing and getting out that message, it's absolutely beautiful. And then I look back on my work and I'm like, wow, I've written this. This is poured through me. And the only reason I wanted to use writing as the example, if it's something new, so say you are doing digital art as an example, you're going to have to learn how to utilize the system, because the Adobe products are not as straightforward as, say, Canva. So there might be a little bit of frustration, but don't be put off by putting one foot in front of the other. You're just opening up new neural pathways. And when you do that for the first time, it can be a little bit tricky, a little bit challenging, a little bit frustrating, but it's really short-lived. Give yourself a chance to get into the flow, past the frustration, past the challenge, the initial challenge of learning a system, as an example.
So what I'm hearing that's probably relevant for the listener to just really tap into for themselves as a reflection is the words that I heard from you that you said it's effortless and it flows and it comes through. And would you agree that when you're a channel for your, say, splinter of source energy, that's exactly the experience, that when we're out of our own way, essentially, it is the modern, say, more mainstream term might be flow state, but it's the kind of thing we can get lost in doing because it doesn't take effort. There's no efforting. But I love what you said, that it might take some effort to master the skill, which is a valid and really relevant point to make. But if you're listening, what is it that you can get lost in? And what is it that even if you're not really, quote unquote, say, world class at, you just love spending time on, that would be a worthy creative expression of your life force. Would you agree, Trace?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people I've come across say, I don't know what I like, but I really like.
Yes, it cracks me up, right? I agree. I don't know what I want to do. I just literally had a conversation with someone yesterday. I don't know what I want to do. And then I said, okay, well, and we ask a bit more. And next minute she's like, oh, I want to do these things. And it cracks me up.
Absolutely. And it's that non-trust that's coming up first. I've got this and I'm in this box, and, it's just peeling back is all.
So yeah, more space and time to let something unfold, to sit with the question longer, perhaps too, for the people who are like, I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would be there? Yeah.
And also the other thing I do want to say is, your divine calling now, sometimes be an apprenticeship to something, and it can be totally left of center and the opposite tomorrow. So don't think, oh my God, I am in this box and everything must work out and whatever, and then you lose the sizzle and then you're going, that happens. Be a little bit open to flow with what comes through for you.
That's such a valid point. I love that. And I think that translates and cross relates to different domains. It's okay for us to be on purpose and on path. And I think one of the limits around it is this idea of, is for something to be true, it has to be a lifetime or a forever thing. And we parlay that perhaps into relationships too. But it's like, if you were relating to life and relating to what calls you and relating to another human in an authentic, present, alive way, when it flows, and when it stops flowing, follow your flow. And if we could just shift this attachment to success equaling a time frame or success equaling a result, right? Do you feel like that would just shift, would liberate so many of us, perhaps, is a better way to say it?
Another thing is, your divine path doesn't need to be really public. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. And the reason I'm saying that is everyone's got a side hustle, and that's cool. Go if that is honestly your divine calling, go to it. However, there are a lot, like you want to be doing it because of you, not because you want to be seen, or or this person's done it so you can do it, or something competitive comes up. You do it because you love it, number one. And there are so many causes out there that need manpower behind them, especially in a volunteering capacity. So when I do come across some people who can't get out of their own way, I do recommend volunteering to them, and they're so thankful because it gets them out of their mind long enough to kind of be helping and adding value, and then they progress so much quicker. And it doesn't need to be formal. Like you could just be helping your neighbor, your elderly neighbor.
Yeah. I love that. Getting physically out of your own quote unquote shit helps shift your shit. That's really top advice, actually. I love that, and very tangible. Okay. So I had two questions that just stemmed off what you said. The first was, when someone feels like they know what they need to do, and they say someone who feels like they understand their purpose and they are in alignment and they're moving forward, and yet they don't do the thing that they either really want to do. So they're deliberately, let's say, sabotaging or not completing something that would move the needle significantly. What do you think is at play there? Or what would be your advice for someone who's like, I am full procrastinating and dialing down in this area, but I don't want to be?
Well, first of all, I've got to take a sip of my big drink.
Of your Yoda cup. I love that.
And it's actually got chlorophyll in it, or not chlorophyll. Is that?
Yeah, chlorophyll, plant blood. That's what I call it. Yeah, the life force of plants. Yeah.
So hopefully I'm not got green. Okay, so oh my goodness, honey, strap on in. You're about to go for a big ride. All right, this is magnificent what you've brought up, and I love sitting with people through this, because you're your own greatest teacher. So whatever comes up, you've got to call your bullshit and say, okay, well, what's coming up is I don't want to do this thing. Great. You have got to make the time to peel back the layer. So what is that? I love journaling. A lot of people don't like it, but I love it. I love it. For that reason, it gives me the space to really nut out, well, what the hell is going on? And a lot of the time, sometimes you're realizing you're carrying something that isn't yours. You're stuck in, I don't know, fear or doubt, or something from this lifetime, something from, you've brought through via epigenetics or a past life. You just don't know. You've got to sit with it. You're your own greatest teacher. Whatever is coming up is a teaching for you.
I love that. Okay. And then the next question is this. You're obviously a very, clear channel. You developed your skills. You can have your chats with Thomas. You can have things come through for people. Do you notice, or have you developed, or what would you say to the correlation between, say, your physical vessel being clear? Is there a correlation, perhaps, is the first question, between physical clarity and being a clear channel and energetic clarity? And what is your advice for people to help? Because I won't taint it with my perspective, so you can answer that, Trace.
Yeah. Okay. A couple things I want to say here. And I'm going to blindside you on what I'm about to say. So I know some people who have really profound illness who are the most amazing psychics. By the way, I'm not a psychic, and I don't align with that at all. And they have really horrible health. So that's what I first of all want to say. The second thing, I don't know what else I want to say on this.
Yeah. And that actually doesn't surprise me or blindside me, but
Oh, yes.
yes.
Oh, no, go.
I was just going to say, I was curious as to whether, for instance, and I really do feel it would be a nuance that's unique to each human, depending on their patterns of blocking, for let's say, but let's say caffeine. Like, have you ever noticed that either busies the mind or something like that, and then therefore the noise makes the quiet voice harder to hear? Or for others, I imagine, it could be alcohol, which is actually a plant medicine. People forget it's called spirits for a reason. I'm just curious if you've ever noticed an interplay between some things we can do actually physically and these energetic, abilities that you've developed.
Well, like you have just touched on, everyone is completely different, and what works for me is not going to work for you, and vice versa. So that needs to really be followed, but that leads into, it's really important to just feel into where you're at energetically. Everything, energy, like the words you speak, the thoughts you have, the things you do, everything has an energy. I'll actually at some point be writing a kid's book on that, because I think it's so important.
Love that, Trace. Do it. Yep.
It's on my to-do list.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so as a quick fire rapid kind of questions now, what would be your number one tip for helping people, or if they're like, I want more energy, just energy in my day, what would be your number one go-to tip?
Yeah, that would be to check in with yourself, stop looking outside yourself, but before you're doing the checking in, just make sure you're balanced and at your center in whatever way works for you. Meditation, movement. So that would be my big one. Another one is start showing up for yourself in little increments every day for 90 days and see what happens. So I'm talking like 10 minutes a day. If you don't have 10 minutes for yourself, maybe have a look at your viewing history on your phone and see if you can get back that 10 minutes by not scrolling, as an example. We have 10 minutes to show up for ourselves to build the trust. And the reason I'm saying that is everyone in the self-development space seems to be going, oh, it's easy, it's quick. Some things you've got to actually build on, especially with self-trust. It's not like, oh, one day I loathe myself, next day I love myself. And the same with self-trust. You've got to build up, but you have got to be there for you. So they're my tips.
I love that. And then what would you say what do you do to activate or elevate your sense of empowerment? So your personal sense of empowerment, say you're just wanting to dial up that level of inner power, what do you do? What do you recommend?
Drop into my heart. Just 100%, because I'm here to serve.
I love that.
That's what I do. I've really done a lot of work on my sense of self, and to some people they're like, yeah, feel your power, and yes, that's really important, but also so is like leading and with your heart and thinking with your heart in combination. That's not the right word, but I want to, whatever. Synchronicity, while syncing with your mind, like your heart and your mind. Don't disregard your intellect. Your intellect is with you for obvious reasons. We need it. It's all about leading with your heart and working and syncing with your intellect.
Yeah, I love it. And then for expression, because it's one thing to feel empowered, as we said, or to feel on purpose, or to feel calm even, and have energy, but to be in expression in the world, what do you do to elevate your either capacity or abilities in that space? How do you activate either your expression to the people in your home, or you can be communicating globally? Like what do you do to feel like, yeah, I want to show up fully as me? Any tips there?
Tips or what I do?
Yeah, what you do.
Well, what I do is I have a social media platform which I share some musings on. I have got a course available, and also I am writing a book.
And we'll link to your social media, your handle for Instagram, and also your website, so everyone can go and check out all of Trace's amazing offerings. And if you feel called, you should absolutely listen to the call. That's a big part, right? Stepping in and trusting yourself. And further to what we said much earlier in our chat, I think when we said, self-trust is something that's developed, people can kind of, I don't know if you agree, fast track this by looking at the times that you didn't trust your intuition or your, and then there's like a lot of evidence there to indicate that you should have. And if you just go back and look at all the times you didn't, and then maybe all the times retrospectively that you did, you very quickly come to realize, yeah, my inner wisdom really is a pretty on point, sage, wise aspect of me to start listening to. I don't know. I just think that, yes, it's a muscle that's built over time, but you already have evidence as to whether or not, you should have listened to it or not.
Absolutely. I hear a lot of my girlfriends say, I should have trusted myself. I knew, especially if you're a mother.
Yeah.
You're like, I knew, but I didn't. I should just trust and I'm like, yes, you should next time. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, Trace, thank you so much I just feel like we could talk for 10 more hours about all the things. And we've gotten people, something to think about, and that's the main thing. So, if anything that we've shared today resonates with you, definitely connect with Trace or screenshot and share online and tag us. We would love to know your takeaways. But yeah, I really do appreciate you for the work that you do and the person that you be and the people that you support, because it is a ripple and it is real. And it does take all of us standing in our light. So Trace, thank you so much for all that you do. Really appreciate
all that you do, Marina.